podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm Steven Toplis. It's Friday the 8th of November and it's time for Friday 5. We're taking a look at the stories that have been making the headlines at the City Ground over the past week. I'm joined by Tom Newton for this week's roundup. Hello, Tom.
Morning.
So now let's go over to Jamie Martin for the top 5 Forest stories of the week.
Hi, this is Jamie Martin. I'm back here with this week's top 5 Forest stories from the 1865 news desk. Now, the headline to this week's news: Edu has agreed a deal in principle to work for Nottingham Forest owner Evangelos Marinakis and his football group. In a milestone moment for Evangelos Marinakis' quest for more success in football, it has been revealed that the Greek shipping tycoon has, in principle, lured Arsenal's revered sporting director Edu Gaspar to oversee his group of football clubs in some capacity, for which is currently unknown in full detail. In the group of clubs owned by Mr Marinakis, which includes Nottingham Forest, Olympiacos and Rio Ave, are a plethora of global staff who cover operations concerning all clubs from scouting to commercial interests. Now Marinakis wishes to add another big name to the group, Edu, for whom has been praised for changing the culture at Arsenal, improving scouting and youth development, while also being instrumental in creating a team worthy of challenging Manchester City in the title race on multiple occasions. Edu resigned from his post at the Gunners earlier in the week in a shock to the club, with his head turned by the Greek billionaire's lucrative offer, for which we believe will offer Edu a vast span of control over the aforementioned clubs. Forest are also looking to purchase more clubs, with one in Cyprus being touted, as well as potential for a South American club being purchased in the future, expanding the multi-club model. The second piece of news this week: Nuno Espirito Santo is set to return to the touchline after a ban. After receiving a ban for misconduct-related charges during Forest's draw to Brighton earlier into the season, Nuno Espirito Santo has completed his 3-match ban from the touchline. The ban came as a result of swearing at match officials following Morgan Gibbs-White's sending off after a tough challenge against João Pedro in the 2-2 draw against the Seagulls. Since then, Nuno managed games but later received his ban, with assistant Rui Pedro Silva taking over as interim and Julio Figueroa his assistant, trusted long-time coaches under Nuno. Now back in the dugout though, the Portuguese head coach has another tough test. Eddie Howe's rising Newcastle, who despite a tough start to the season are on the charge for success after a huge win against Arsenal last weekend. The third piece of news, and it is transfer related, the first in a while this week for transfer news, as Nottingham Forest have been linked with Bayern Munich wonderkid Matthias Tell. At just 19, Tell has showcased his talent on various stages, both in the Bundesliga, domestic competitions and indeed Europe. He's a future star, but it is tough to break into this title-chasing Bayern Munich side under Vincent Kompany. Reports came from Florian Plettenberg of Sky Germany this week, with the transfer expert reporting that Tell is focused on Bayern only and isn't actively seeking a loan move. It is unclear as to whether Forest's interest will move to something more serious, but more updates will surely follow. It's unclear at the moment whether Forest would want a permanent deal or a loan deal, but January could be a moment to watch for Matthias Tell's future and Nottingham Forest's interest. Now, another piece of news concerning the owner of Nottingham Forest: Evangelos Marinakis has lost his stadium ban appeal. After being given a ban by the FA from stadiums for 5 matches, Nottingham Forest immediately confirmed that Evangelos Marinakis would appeal such a ban and protest his innocence against FA allegations. Following the news of his appeal, just a matter of weeks later, the FA have ruled that Evangelos Marinakis' appeal has been unsuccessful, with his defence not deemed sufficient for his appeal to be successful. The Greek shipping magnate said that he had a hacking cough and that his heavy smoking of cigars made him need to cough phlegm. The FA alleged that he did so on purpose in front of match officials. However, Marinakis completely denies this claim. Mr Marinakis will now have to serve the remaining 2 games of his ban, as per the previous FA ruling. Now, the final piece of news this week, and it does again concern transfers: Lewis O'Brien is set for a permanent move to the MLS. Since joining in 2022 and having had multiple loans, it seems as though Lewis O'Brien's time at Nottingham Forest is up, with reports saying that he is preparing for a permanent move to the US. Reports this week shared that O'Brien, who arrived from Huddersfield in a double deal with close friend and defender Harry Toffolo, states that the Englishman will complete a £7 million move to MLS side LAFC, for which he has been on loan since the summer. O'Brien's loan ends in January, and as expected, should everything go to plan, that he will move soon after that. That is the latest news from the 1865 news desk. Though I'm Jamie Martin, be sure to catch up with me on Twitter /X as it is now known via @I'mJamieMartin. Updates on Nottingham Forest related news throughout the week. Take care, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jamie. So let's have a look at those stories in a bit more detail now. And we're starting with the news that Edu has left his role as Arsenal sporting director to take up a role looking after Evangelos Marinakis' group of football clubs. It's a deal that's been agreed in principle. We don't know his job title yet. And he's taken up a role within Evangelos Marinakis' football group. We know that the group comprises of Forest, Olympiacos and Rio Ave in Portugal. And it's a story which I think caught most of us by surprise, Tom. I don't know about you. I wouldn't have seen this coming. But it looks like Marinakis has lured Edu away from Arsenal and is now going to spearhead his own group of football clubs.
Yeah, well, it got mentioned in the summer, didn't it? And we were like, oh, it's just like journalists having a bit of a quiet day in the office and just come up with some story. But then obviously since then, behind the scenes, it's snowballed and it looks like Marinakis has got his man. And I think it's a real coup that he actually got somebody of his prestige, because we all know what Arsenal stands for in English football, European football, and obviously the world. But I think in the 90s, when we was doing quite well, i.e. the 94, 95, I think Forest have had a danger in the past of standing still, and obviously haven't really made progress when we've got in some decent positions. Whereas under Evangelos Marinakis, we seem to be wanting to go to places. He's not just happy to be in the Premier League. He wants to obviously build the brand and everything, and getting somebody like Edu he had a decent career, didn't he, for Brazil and Arsenal and other clubs, and to get him behind the scenes, I think it's a massive coup for Marinakis. And remember a few years ago on the steps of the council house, he says he wants to win trophies, and we all think slow down a minute. We've just got to the Premier League after 23 years, but the guy is super ambitious, and if he's going to get elite staff in behind the scenes, whether it's just with Forest or with the array of clubs he's purchased in the last few years, and obviously Olympiacos, then I think it's a win-win, because obviously we want to go places and he doesn't want to just stand still and do nothing.
Edu's history with Arsenal goes back to 2001 when he first joined them as a player. He was there for 4 years. And then he returned to the club initially as technical director in the summer of 2019. 3 years after that, he became their first ever sporting director. So he had a hand in signings, contract renewals, and moving players on who were no longer needed by the club. He also oversaw other aspects at Arsenal, including the academy. When he was first appointed, he was seen as a very important part of Arsenal's rebuild and recovery in the post-Wenger years, and Edu himself had a big part to play in bringing Mikel Arteta back to the club as head coach at the end of 2019. Now, we don't know yet, Tom, what his role is going to be in Marinakis' football group, but do you see him having a hands-on approach to the clubs, or is he there to provide more of an overseeing role, and his experience can filter down to all of the different clubs involved?
I think he's got a huge role to play for the number of years being part of Marinakis' empire. You don't leave Arsenal if the package, the project isn't going to be a big project for Edu and his career aspirations in administration role. So I think, yeah, it's going to be a pretty big role, isn't it? Like I said, you don't leave Arsenal, and no disrespect, but we're not as big as Arsenal, but you don't leave Arsenal if you're not going to have a more hands-on role kind of thing. So yeah, I think he's sold the dream, hasn't he, Marinakis to Edu, and obviously he's took it, and you never know, in a few years we might be winning more trophies. than
Be nice,
Arsenal.
wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
because yeah,
Imagine
exactly.
that.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, yeah, I don't. We get like blamed for it, don't we, for a lot of time? But we've got two massive European trophies, what they haven't got. So, so yeah, it's a bit
Yeah.
different scene on the way to his office each morning if he's based in Nottingham. That's for sure.
Yeah. And if you have a look at the top six of the Premier League now, there's one team that's the odd one out, and it's not the one from the banks of the Trent, let me tell you. But yes, you look at Edu, and I think he's left a job at Arsenal not finished because they haven't won the league yet. They haven't won a European trophy. So that's why I'm so surprised and also quite excited that he has decided to leave Arsenal now and link up with Marinakis, because it does feel like they're still a work in progress in many ways, even though they've come a long way and they
Yeah.
are one of the best clubs in the country and one of the best teams around. They've still got things that they needed to do and they haven't quite done it yet.
Yeah, you just don't know what's been happening behind the scenes, do you? If you watch the Arsenal documentary on Amazon a few years ago, he did come across as a very hands-on, newy stuff kind of thing, and he had a decent relationship with Mikel Arteta. But you don't know what's happening above him, i.e., Stan Kroenke and Josh Kroenke. You don't know if Josh Kroenke wants to more of a hands-on approach, and obviously, Edu's had to be pushed away to the side kind of thing. But at the end of the day, Arsenal's not our problem, really, is it? It's what we do, and if Mr. Marinakis wants to expand this club and make the brand better and bigger and have aspirations to be at the top end of the Premier League, then so be it.
Yep, it's exciting times and we wait to see what happens there. It certainly feels like a big statement of intent from Evangelos Marinakis. Let's have a look at our second story then, and it is that Forest head coach Nuno is going to be back in the dugout this weekend for the Newcastle game. He was banned for misconduct, given a 3-game ban after swearing at the officials at Brighton following Morgan Gibbs-White's red card. Now, Forest have won all 3 games with Nuno in the stands, and we've had his assistant, Rui Pedro Silva, taking charge in the meantime. I think if it was left up to me, Tom, I'd leave it as it is, because Forest are doing really well and they're in a nice run of form, and having Nuno up in the stands seems to be working well.
Yeah, well, we seem to be like coaching wise and his members of staff, it seems to be a well-oiled machine at the moment. You can see the rapport what his assistant Rui Pedro Silva has with the players when he got booked, didn't he, when Callum Hudson-Odoi scored last Saturday, and you can see like the togetherness kind of thing. Because in the past, it's like the assistant just seems to be like a completely different person to the main man kind of thing. But it seems, if you look at all his coaching staff, they seem to be very close, and it's a well-oiled machine. And if you listen to Colin Frey at post-match, he's asked Nuno this numerous of times. Nuno hates it, doesn't he, at the back of the stand or whatever. He wants like obviously a hands-on role on the touchline kind of thing. So, but it hasn't really affected us, has it, really, since he got shown the red card against Brighton. But yeah, look who's going to be in the house on Sunday, Mr. Anthony Taylor, who he had a go at, didn't he, against Brighton about a month ago. So, but yeah, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, because Anthony Taylor hasn't done anything in the last couple of weeks, nor has any other referee, because they've been pretty quiet and we've been winning. So, but yeah, it'd be nice to see Nuno back on the touchline, but I don't think his absence has had a detrimental effect on us with our current form.
I thought you were going to say, with Anthony Taylor in charge, another 3-game ban will follow for Nuno after the Newcastle game. But yeah, I'm not going to go down that route, and let's hope that Nuno's influence back in the dugout will have a positive effect on Forest on Sunday. The third story that Jamie brought us is transfer news, and it is that Forest have been linked with Bayern Munich youngster Mathys Tel. Now, he is a French player who plays as a forward for the Bundesliga side. He's somebody who is very highly rated. He's only 19 years old, and he is a player who's got good pace. He's a strong finisher, and he's a good dribbler of the ball. He has been compared in some quarters to Kylian Mbappe and Karim Benzema, which isn't bad company to keep at all. Now, Tell has been with Bayern Munich for 3 years, having signed from Rennes. He's made a total of 56 appearances for Bayern. I should say that's 56 games in the Bundesliga and 12 goals he scored. Overall, 76 appearances in all competitions and 16 goals, which is a pretty good return for a wing forward, if you like. But do you see Tell as a kind of player that would fit in at Forest? I suppose his profile being a young player who's perhaps struggling to make an impact at a bigger club. On that basis, he would be an ideal Forest signing because they've got a good track record with those kind of players in recent years.
Yeah, he has got a pretty decent profile, and obviously being at Bayern Munich, and you don't go there if you're below average kind of thing. So we'll just have to wait and see, won't we? We're going to be hearing a lot of rumours from now until the end of the window, and it's just my biggest concern, and I don't think Forest would do anything stupid, but you want to keep this team together, like the likes of Alanga, Hudson-Odoi, Murillo, until the summer at the very least, because we're building something here and we're in a really good position, and you just don't know where we're going to go. But at the moment, it's exciting. I don't want to get too ahead of myself and saying it's going to be European football, but if you can't dream as a football fan, what's the point? So it'd be nice to keep the squad together, and if we do sign the odd player along the way in January, then so be it. But yeah, Tell looks a really decent prospect, doesn't he? And if it happens, it's just another positive aspect of our squad, what we can bring on, because obviously got Hudson-Odoi, Alanga, Souza, Silva, then obviously Wood, Awani. It's a really good blend of dynamic players and quite young, quick, and that's the profile of what our side is at the moment. So yeah, if we get players of that profile, then it's certainly going to be a good thing, isn't it?
It is, and Forest have had some success buying from the Bundesliga in recent years, so it feels like a market that Forest know well, and you hope that they will have done their homework on a player like Mathys Tell, and we'll wait to see if anything materialises from it. But again, another exciting player for Forest to be linked with. We're going to take a short break, but we will be back with you in a few minutes' time with the rest of this week's Friday Five.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Welcome back to this week's Friday Five. It's Stephen here, and I've got Tom with me as we take a look through the top 5 stories from Nottingham Forest over the past week. Let's now pick up with the next story that Jamie brought us, and this is that Forest owner Evangelos Marinakis has lost his appeal against his 5-game stadium ban, which was handed out when he was found guilty of improper conduct for spitting on the floor as match officials walked past, following Forest's 1-0 defeat by Fulham at the City Ground at the end of September. Now, as we spoke about in previous editions of Friday 5, Marinakis denied the charge and he appealed against the Regulatory Commission's outcome, but that appeal was later dismissed. It's now come out that the FA have wanted to send a clear message with this dismissal of the appeal. In a statement, the FA said, showing such contempt for match officials in a place where that can be seen by other individuals significantly undermines respect for the game of football. Such behaviour is only more serious when it comes from an individual who himself has a position of both power and responsibility within the game. Now, we've spoken at length about the incident and the rights and wrongs of it, mainly the wrongs of it. Those are strong words from the FA, aren't they, Tom? And it does feel like a hardline stance from them, because this isn't the first time either that Marinakis has got himself involved with match officials and powers in the game of football.
Yeah, if he does it in Greece, he does it in Greece, but in the Premier League, it's completely different. The eyes of the world are on the Premier League and there's a lot more scrutiny. But I know people are going to say, well, he owns the stadium he owns the club, he can do what he wants. He can to a certain extent, but you tell me another manager or another owner or chairman hanging around in the tunnel. It never happens at like Man U. You don't see like Jim Ratcliffe in the tunnel. You don't see Todd Bowley at Chelsea in the tunnel. And you don't see Stan Kroenke at Arsenal. So first and foremost, he shouldn't really be there anyway. If he's upset with a refereeing decision, which we are most weeks, there's got to be like better ways of obviously communicating that to the powers being. And then the story what came out, it was just absolutely far-fetched. It was like something what you did in a playground where first and foremost, like spitting is like, it's horrible, isn't it? It's like one of the worst things, if not the worst thing you can do. And he says, oh, he's had cigars. It just sounds like something trying to get out of like a detention at school kind of thing. It was so far-fetched. But first and foremost, it's like Simon Jordan said it on Talk Sport with Jim White. It's like, it doesn't need to be in the tunnel anyway. The tunnel should be for like match officials or players and technical staff. What is he going to achieve by hanging around there having to go out to referee? Because it's just going to make the situation worse, because obviously he's going to be het up in the moment, because obviously a decision hasn't gone our way. But just make it a bit easier for yourself and just go down like the correct route rather than hanging around a tunnel demonstrating with the referees or the officials. It's just not going to do you any favors, is it? So, but no, it was just first and foremost, it's just stupid what he did, and regardless of his angst regarding the referees and things like that. But no, just stay away from tunnels. That'd be my advice to him. Then he doesn't bring any unwanted press to the club.
Well, that's exactly it. That's what it's done. And it's put Forest in the spotlight, not for positive reasons. And, the club's in a really good place, certainly on the field at the moment. And the last thing we need is off-field matters and the owner of the club getting involved in incidents and stories like this, because, it does. It can damage the reputation of the club and make us look like a not very well-run machine, shall we say. So, yes, time will tell if Marinakis learns from these events. Part of me seems to think he won't. But nevertheless, the FA have made their line pretty clear on this, and it will be a 5-game stadium ban for Marinakis to come. On to our final story then, and it involves Forest midfielder Lewis O'Brien. He's been on loan in MLS. He's been with LAFC. But reports suggest that he could now make his move to the US a permanent one. Now, he's 26 years old. He's been with Forest since promotion in 2022. He was in and out of the team under Steve Cooper in the first half of that Premier League season, but then once the influx of players came in and more experience was brought in, O'Brien found himself out of favour, and it now looks like his time at Forest could well be coming to an end. There is a deal agreed between Forest and LAFC for a fee of £7 million for O'Brien, which feels like pretty decent business all in, because given that he's not played all that much for Forest and he joined in a joint deal with Harry Toffolo from Huddersfield, it looks like, Tom, Forest are going to get a decent chunk back on their investment.
Yeah, £7 million for somebody who's hardly played for 2 and a bit years. I think it's pretty decent, and he gets to play in a nice part of the world, in LA, in California, and all of that. So he's just been a victim of success, hasn't he? He come in, and when we did get promoted, it was kind of, he's a player who looked good in the playoff final, if you remember, and the games what played previously in the league in that final season in the championship, and he looked pretty good. But because of the sheer volume of players coming in, bit of loss of form. Then, if you remember, he was meant to go on loan somewhere, wasn't he? And they cocked up his registration, and then he wasn't
Blackburn,
named in
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Then he wasn't named in the 25-man Premier League squad. So then did he go to America after that, or? No, he went to Middlesbrough, didn't he?
Middlesbrough, yeah.
Yeah, so it is a bit of a cock-up, and it's just no fault of his own. He's just been a victim of the success, and obviously how quick we've basically stayed in the Premier League and obviously tried to improve year on year, and obviously he's just like lost his way, and then obviously he's gone out on loan. So yeah, he's done nothing wrong. And when he did play for us, he didn't ever let us down. He scored against Fulham, didn't he? And that was it 3-2 game, and he started that first season in the Premier League pretty well. He had a really good game against West Ham, if you remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just our form and going into a low block and changing our midfield and all that type of thing. It's just he's just been a victim of the success we've been in, and he can crack on with his career, and we get £7 million. So and then I should have said earlier when we was talking about Edu, then if he manages to get Matt Turner out the door for close to £7 million, then he's going to be a genius in the first week, isn't he?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And O'Brien, he did play in America as well on loan previously, DC United, and then he went to Middlesbrough. But I look at Lewis O'Brien and think in an alternate universe, he might well have come in at Forest and really established himself and been a key player, because he was somebody who was on the up in his career with Huddersfield, and it felt like had Huddersfield not got promoted, a Premier League club would have come in for him and picked him up, and Forest did, but it didn't quite work out for him for many different reasons. But I think if he does leave the City ground, he leaves with everybody's best wishes and certainly no animosity towards him. It's just a transfer that hasn't worked out in the end. So just before we wrap up Friday 5, we'll take a quick look ahead to the weekend. Forest against Newcastle on Sunday, and Forest at the City ground for the second week in succession off the back of the 3-0 victory over West Ham last week. Forest flying high, third in the Premier League table, in fantastic form and a great position. But he does feel like Newcastle will provide a different test, Tom, and could be a good barometer of where Forest actually are.
Yeah, I can't wait for the game. In the last few years, games against Newcastle have been rather entertaining. I mean, 3-2 was it last year? Year before, we just lost 2-1, didn't we, at home when Emmanuel Dennis scored, and then the cup game was pretty decent. We let a goal in the first minute, you're thinking we're going to get hammered here because of the team what we put out. No disrespect, but we didn't really know that team then, and took Newcastle to a penalty shootout. So yeah, it's going to be a really good barometer to see where we are and everything. But I don't fear them. I think defensively we're absolutely sound. I wouldn't change the team. I think Dominguez has been absolutely fantastic. He's probably been one of our best players in the last month or so. Him and Yates complement each other really well. The wingers are doing really well. Then obviously we've got strength and depth on the bench, which you couldn't say that the last two seasons, because we've had a good 11, but then beyond that it wasn't strong enough. But yeah, the players what we can bring on are a really good quality as well. So yeah, I can't wait for the game, and they've got some decent players as well, but so have we. So like I says, they be fearing the likes of Hudson-Odoi, Alanga, and all of that, and Chris Wood. So, but yeah, let's have it basically and see where we are. And if we do get a really good result before the international break, it just sets us up nicely when we go to Arsenal in a few weeks, because we all know ultimately the Arsenal game is going to be a really, really hard game, but they're not like the slick machine they were a few weeks ago. So you never know. But yeah, we're playing with a load of confidence at the moment, consistency and belief, and the fans believe that we can get something against anybody these days, and it's really refreshing, isn't it? And I don't fear anybody in the Premier League at the moment because of how well we're playing.
Yep, no reason to fear anybody, and Forest should go into that game with plenty of confidence. Just a final line as well, because you mentioned the international break. Morgan Gibbs-White has been named in the England squad for the forthcoming Nations League matches with Greece and the Republic of Ireland. Lee Carsley's final two games in interim charge before Thomas Tuchel takes up the post in 2025. So congratulations to Morgan Gibbs-White, and let's hope he can add to his solitary England cap. We'll leave it there then. That's the end of this week's Friday 5. My thanks to Jamie for providing the stories. Thanks also to Tom Newton for joining me. We will be back in your feeds in a couple of days' time with our match report from the Newcastle match. So until then, thanks for listening, and we'll see you later.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.